Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Alice and this is English with Alice B, where you can come to learn English in a clear and simple way without the stress. So this video is actually my first from my playlist, True Crime in Slow English. So in a few moments, you will see a page with a list of vocabulary, phrases, and phrasal verbs that I am going to use in this video. So feel free to pause the video if you want to take a look at the vocabulary and phrases. I will show it for about 5-10 seconds. You may want to pause the video, take a quick look at the definitions, and then as you listen to this video, you will hear these words and phrases being used, and hearing them in some context may help you to understand them a little bit better. Let's start with the case of today and let's talk English. Today, I have picked to cover the story of Chris Watts. Now, this is a very famous case. It happened only a few years ago, back in 2018. And in 2020, Netflix released a really interesting documentary about this story. So it has been in the public eye. If you have heard about this before, I would not be surprised. This is a case that blows my mind. This is a case that even after a few years of knowing the story and hearing different podcasts and documentaries, it still shocks me every time. What's so shocking for me about this case is that you just didn't see it coming. With a lot of killers and a lot of murderers, there's sometimes little signs, right? In their childhood or as they grew up into adolescence, they have a history of violence or strange behavior, or they've said or they've done weird things in the past. With Chris Watts, he was just a seemingly relaxed, chill, quiet guy. When you look at the interviews and reports from his colleagues and neighbors, it seems that the people around Chris thought he was the perfect father, the perfect husband, the perfect colleague. They were the perfect all American family. You know, a husband, Chris, and his wife, Shanann Watts, their two baby girls, Bella and Cece, and another baby on the way who they were planning to call Nico. But the reality, or at least the ending of this story, is far from perfect. So stay with me, guys. This is a long video. This is a quite a horrible case, but let's begin. So let's begin with some background information. So some important information before the main event. Chris Watts was born on the 16th of May, 1985 in North Carolina. So this story takes place in the United States. His parents were Cindy and Ronnie Watts, and from all accounts, from all reports, they seem to grow up with a relatively normal family life. They were close as a unit. Chris went to a local school, graduated, and was considered quite smart, actually. There's nothing reported about his childhood or adolescence that is abnormal. He finished high school and went on to study automation. And his teachers and his peers in class, so his classmates, described him as someone who was a little shy, a little introverted. He could be awkward at times, but not anything sinister. It didn't seem that he was like a recluse or that he just didn't like people. He was just a little bit nervous, perhaps, in the presence of others. They said that he would sit in class and not say a word often. He was just a bit of a quiet guy, but nothing strange, nothing extraordinary. He was described by a lot of people as easygoing. If you are easygoing, you are a person who is easy to get on with, easy to be around. Okay, you're a little bit quiet. He's not a strong personality. He's not a difficult person to be around. So, who was Shanann Watts? Shanann Watts was born on January 10, 1984, in New Jersey. So, again, always in the States. She was born Shannon Rusick to parents Frank and Sandra. She also had a younger brother, Frank Jr., and it seems that from all reports, this was, again, another relatively normal, happy family, nothing extraordinary to report about her childhood. She was very close with her family and very much loved by the people around her, and her friends, colleagues, neighbors, and of course her family would describe her as sociable, as vibrant, as a go getter. So, somebody who has ambitions and actually works to achieve them. She was a cheerful, vibrant soul, someone who was full of life. And what we know for sure about her is she loved being a wife and she loved being a mother. She really did have this dream of, the perfect family unit, a happy wife and husband, beautiful children, big house, garden. That was kind of her dream. She was described as a very generous and caring mother, and she was totally dedicated to her children. She was someone who was determined to provide the best possible life for her family. So Chris and Shanann met on Facebook in 2010. He friended her. It seems that they had some mutual contacts, and this is where they began chatting. Shanann said that one thing led to another, which means after some time, their relationship progressed. They became more than friends. They started an official relationship, and a couple of years later, in November 2012, they got married and moved to Colorado. The couple had two daughters, Bella Marie Watts and Celeste, or Cece Watts. Bella was born in 2013 and Cece a couple of years later in 2015. And at the time of this story, Shanann was also pregnant with their third child, a boy this time, who they were going to call Nico, who was expected in early February of 2019. Shanann worked from home as a promoter and advertiser for a marketing company, and Chris worked as an oil field operator. So if you look at the videos and the photos that Shanann was posting on, I think it was her Facebook, you could easily look at this family and think they have it all, right? It's a perfect, happy family. All of the videos were of the little girls playing together or playing with their dad.
Sorry, guys, for the loud screaming. Your mom's on, Christina. Hi, Mama.
You're down.
Do you float?
It's funny. Do you float or do you sink? Sink. Do you float or do you sink? Float.
Good job.
Lots of family holidays, lots of time with their grandparents, living a happy, healthy life. Shanann did suffer from diabetes, but it doesn't seem like this was anything that prevented her from living a normal life. Just this beautiful family in a 5-bedroom house in Colorado with a dog, with a garden. What could possibly be wrong? The troubles really start around June, July time of 2018. This is when Shanann starts to notice that her husband Chris is changing a little bit. His behavior is changing. We know that because of texts found in Shanann's phone, she would message friends about these doubts that she was having about her husband. Shanann started to notice that Chris was being colder, more distant, seemingly less interested in the whole family. And an important point of this story comes when Shanann decides to go to North Carolina for 6 weeks with her children, with both of the girls, and Chris stayed at home in Colorado. Now, this trip was just for Shanann to go and see some family. This was not a separation or anything at this point. It was just a holiday. This is when Shanann really starts to feel this gap between them, this distance between them. As I said, we know this from text messages that she had sent to her friends. She opened up to her friends and told them that while she was in North Carolina from the end of June to early August, he wasn't answering her phone calls. He was taking longer to reply to text messages. And then when he was replying, his attitude or his behavior was just a little bit colder than she was expecting. Just a lot of little things. And in general, she was just questioning his behavior. So she was gone on this trip, as I said before, for 6 weeks. This is a long time to be without your partner and your children, I think. So obviously, when she returned home to Colorado, when she meets back up with her husband, she was expecting some kind of beautiful reunion, a warm welcome, a hug and a kiss. You would expect that your husband would have missed you, would be excited to see you, but no. Shanann told her friends that when they were reunited, she noticed immediately that he wasn't being as intimate with her, he wasn't kissing her as often, he wasn't hugging her as often, and she felt it immediately that something was very wrong. Texts sent from Shanann to her friends really paint this image of a desperate and a confused wife, someone who doesn't understand these changes that she's noticed in her husband, doesn't know where they've come from, doesn't really understand what's happened. She was just desperately trying to understand her husband and ultimately save her marriage. In some of her text messages to her friends, she says that I don't know who he is. He hasn't touched me all week. He hasn't kissed me or talked to me, except for when I've asked him, trying to figure out what's wrong. She says that Chris told her he doesn't think they were compatible anymore. And this devastated Shanann. She would put in messages that she just wanted to cry. Later, Chris also revealed that he was not happy about this third pregnancy, that he was completely satisfied with Belle and Celeste, and that he didn't want this third child. This obviously devastated Shanann, who believed that she was building this perfect family, this perfect life, and suddenly she's confronted, and suddenly she realizes that the husband she was building this life with doesn't actually want the same things as her. Shanann also explained, always in text messages to her friends, that she was holding on to hope. So she was keeping hold of hope. She had bought self-help books and was actually even planning to go to couples therapy with Chris. She was just determined to fix things and make things work for her and her family. So we arrived to the morning of August the 13th, 2018. Now it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and Shanann is dropped off at her house by a friend and a colleague. She had been on a work trip for a couple of days and she was just returning home. We know that she comes home just after 1 a.m. because there's footage from their home camera. The home camera catches her arriving, entering the house, and then that's it. A few hours later, so around 10 and 11 a.m., her friend and colleague from before, Nicole, started to get worried. Nicole had messaged Shanann just to check on her, just to see if she was okay, had called her but was not receiving any response. Nicole said that this was strange from Shanann. Remember, Shanann's a very, very sociable person. She was described as someone who was always responsive, and they even said that she was glued to her phone. So this means she always had the phone in her hand. So it was very strange and honestly a little bit alarming for Nicole that she hadn't heard any response from Shanann. Shanann had also missed a couple of doctor's appointments earlier that morning. And then in the afternoon, when she doesn't arrive at work for a meeting, Nicole decides to go to her house and just check and see that she's okay. Nicole arrives at the house, and of course, she doesn't find anyone. Chris himself is at work. No one's answering the door. Shanann is still not answering the phone. Nicole decides to call Chris, who's at work, and Chris says he'll come home. It'll take him 45 minutes. In this time, Nicole also decides to contact the police.
How you guys doing? What's that? Yeah. How you been?
Hi.
You Nicole?
Yes.
Okay. What's going on?
So my friend, we were out of town for a business trip this weekend.
Right.
And I dropped her off at 2 o'clock this morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant. She wasn't feeling well, and she had a doctor's appointment this morning at 9. And I told her to let me know if she needed me to take her. She's got 2 little girls, and she was very distraught over the weekend. Wasn't eating normally or drinking, and we kept trying to force it on her because she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband and her supposedly are separating, but she didn't know this. She thought they were just having issues. He disclosed that to me today.
Okay.
Because I called him and I was like, have you talked or heard from Shanann since she left for work this morning? Because I can't get a hold of her. I've called, I've texted. Her car's in the garage. Her shoes she wears every single day are by the front door.
She only has one vehicle?
Now, initially, the worry is that because Shanann is diabetic, maybe she's missed something with her medication, or maybe she hasn't taken something and she's passed out. So she's fainted or she's lost consciousness. So the worry is that Shanann may be inside the house, but she's unconscious. She's unresponsive, obviously, and the girls are there with her. When the police arrive, Chris arrives shortly after, and he says that the last time that he saw Shanann was earlier that morning when he left for work. He said he left Shanann and the girls asleep while he went to work at about 5 o'clock in the morning. He suggested that perhaps Shanann had gone on a play date. So a play date is when you, as a parent, meet up with another parent who has children and you go to a park or you go to a play area or something where the children can play together. Once they enter the home and they look around, the police find nothing suspicious. There's no sign that someone has been inside the house. There's no sign that anything has been taken from the house. But what they do find is that Shanann has left behind her purse with her medication in it, an EpiPen that she carried everywhere with her because her oldest daughter Bella had allergies. So she always had this pen in her purse just in case of emergency, her mobile phone, and her wedding ring. Suddenly, Nicole feels sick to her stomach. She knows that something is really wrong. One, because Shanann is always with her phone. She would never leave home without her or Bella's medication. And the wedding ring being left behind is just a sign that maybe she's left, maybe something really strange has happened.
Anybody like this?
It's on the mic there, I'm not sure if that is it. Her phone.
Her phone's here?
Yeah.
Her phone's here.
Does she work?
Yeah, she works from home.
Oh, from home?
She works, this is her lifeline.
This is her purse?
That's her purse. It's her medication. She takes these, her medication's still in here.
This is where the police start to notice some strange behavior with Chris. At this moment, where he supposedly thinks his wife and children are missing, she's left her wedding ring, she's not taken her phone, he doesn't seem worried or panicked about his missing wife and children. The police go and talk to some neighbors who all say the same thing. They haven't really seen anything suspicious. They haven't heard anything. Chris is a quiet, shy guy, but one neighbor does have some CCTV footage just from his cameras on his house of Chris at about 5 o'clock in the morning reversing his truck into the house and putting some things inside. Chris is very cool, very relaxed. He just says that that's the same routine every morning. He puts his tools in his car and that's when he goes to work.
Nothing wrong there.
You just have to
My camera.
the truck up to the drive.
Lay down. Loading my stuff up in my coolers, my water jugs, my book bag, my computers, some of the tools that I had from the toolbox. I knew I was going to have to do some pumping unit rubbers today. That's why I was out so far.
So at this moment, no signs that anything terrible has happened yet. So the investigation begins, and of course, Chris is the husband, the father, and most importantly, he is the last person to have seen Shanann and the kids, according to his own testimony. Chris at this point has not been arrested, but he has been brought in for questioning. As the investigation goes on, the detectives start to notice Chris is just, his behavior is really, really strange. He isn't crying, he isn't emotional, he isn't asking for his wife and children to come home. They start to understand a few things about him that make him look more and more like a suspect. Chris also does an interview with the local news, and his behavior here is just strange. Now, everybody grieves in a different way, and when your wife and children go missing, there's no proper way to behave. But the interview that he gives was just so odd. He's almost smiling in a way. Again, he doesn't seem panicked or worried. He's very kind of relaxed looking, very laid back.
If your wife can see this, if she can watch this, what would you like to tell your wife and your kids?
Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like, if somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here. Please bring her back. If she's vanished, like, I want her back so bad. I want those kids back so bad. I just want them back. I just want them to come back. And if they're not safe right now, that's what's tearing me apart.
This just made the police and the detectives even more suspicious. So they begin to focus on Chris. In the interrogations, his answers are a little inconsistent. His behavior was described as odd, which means weird or strange. And on August 15, so 2 days after the disappearance of his wife and children, he is asked to do a polygraph test, the famous truth test. He accepts and they go ahead with this polygraph test. And Chris is asked questions such as, do you know what happened to your wife and children? Did you have anything to do with their disappearance? Are you cheating on your wife? Do you have another romantic relationship that she doesn't know about? He, of course, answers no to everything. When they get the test results back from his polygraph test, Chris has failed every single question.
So it is completely clear that you were not honest during the testing, and I think you already know that. You did not pass the polygraph test.
Okay.
Okay. So now we need to talk about what actually happened. I feel like you're probably ready to do that.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph. I promise.
Chris,
I know.
Chris, stop. It's time. Just
I'm
stop for a minute. Take a deep breath. I want you to take a deep breath right now.
Now, polygraph tests are not admissible in court because if you are nervous, if you are anxious, if you're tired, there's so many factors that could change the results, but it's just so the detectives have something to work with. But perhaps the biggest reason for suspicion and the biggest shock comes when investigators discover that Chris is in fact having an affair. So when you have an affair, you have a romantic relationship outside of your marriage. He was having another relationship that his wife, Shanann, of course, did not know about with a co-worker called Nicole Kessinger. Investigators uncovered this affair by just looking through Chris's phone. Really, they found a lot of emails, text messages, interaction on social media, photos. So they knew that he had been dating Nicole Kessinger at least for a couple of months before the disappearance of Shanann and his children.
I cheated on her. I know. And this is very good.
I'm not proud of it. Like, I didn't think anything like that could happen. I don't think I'd ever do it, but I did.
I know. Keep going.
And she accused me of it. I denied it. Like, I cheated on her, and I feel horrible for it. Like, she was pregnant, and it was. I don't want. I didn't hurt her. I cheated on her. I hurt her emotionally. I cheated on her, and I feel absolutely horrible about this. That 5 weeks I was alone, I was with her most of the time. I mean, she knew I was married, yes. And I told her we were going through issues, yes. I saw her, took my breath away, and I'd never thought in a million years that could happen.
I know.
It was, I never felt that way about anybody in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, they know Chris lied about having an affair, about having another relationship, and that now we have a motive. We have a reason why Chris may have wanted his family to disappear. With all of this evidence shown to Chris, he starts to get really nervous, really agitated, and he feels that the walls are closing in. So he feels that he's running out of options. And ultimately, he confesses. So, what does he confess to exactly? What happened on the night that Shanann disappeared? Well, according to Chris, Shanann arrives home from her business trip at 1 a.m. on August 13th. We know this to be true because of the footage that we see. When she arrives home, she and Chris have what he describes as an emotional argument. They talk about separation. Shanann confronts him basically. She says that she's noticed he's being cold and distant, and actually, she asks him if he is seeing someone else romantically. She asks him if he is having this affair. He denies having an affair. So he says, no, this isn't true. But he does say that he wants a separation. So in this emotional argument, it seems that Shanann understands that Chris doesn't want to be with her anymore. And in fact, he wants to separate and later get a divorce. He says that after talking for a few hours, Shanann was, again, devastated. She was super upset, and actually she started to become angry. Chris says that after this conversation, he goes downstairs. So he goes to another area of the house to start packing bags. He was going to spend the night at another friend's house. So he's in another area of the house, and according to Chris, he started to hear noises upstairs, some strange noises upstairs. So he goes back upstairs and he goes to his daughter's room, his youngest daughter's room, Cece, and he sees that Shanann, in her sadness and in her anger, has killed Bella, their oldest daughter, and was in the process of killing Cece. He says that Shanann strangled them to death. So Shanann has killed the baby girls, and Chris flies into a fit of rage. So he becomes really angry, too angry to control himself, and he attacks Shanann, strangling her and ultimately killing her too.
So the conversation happened. You go downstairs. She's still upstairs. And then you see what?
I hear just commotion upstairs, just like, like little noises like that.
Okay. Was your wife on top of Cece? What did that look like? I mean, was she straddling her? Okay. And where were they?
In the bed.
On the bed. And so your wife was on top. Was she doing this?
That's when I was walking out from the back.
Okay. And she was off from the back?
Yeah.
Okay. But she was doing this?
It looked like it was like this.
Yeah, okay. And then was Cece face up, face down, what?
Off to the side.
Oh, she was laying on her side? Okay.
And that's when I pulled her off.
Okay. And then what happened?
I looked at her and I just got on top of her and
You got on top of Shanann?
did the same thing.
Now, this version of events is not true. The police didn't believe that this is what had happened. They didn't believe that Shanann killed her girls. It didn't really make sense to them why, after a conversation about separating, Shanann would decide to just kill their girls out of anger or out of rage. They didn't believe it. But at this moment in time, they have a confession. Chris has at least admitted to killing his wife, and this is enough to arrest him on suspicion of murder. Now, because the police don't believe in Chris's version of events, they do put pressure on him. They continue to interrogate him, and eventually Chris confesses to everything. He tells the complete truth. He admits that it was in fact him who killed Shanann, and it was also him who killed the little girls, Bella and Cece. So, according to Chris's later confession, the actual story went like this. Shanann returns home from her business trip at 1 a.m. and they have this emotional argument in which she confronts him about the affair. He denies it, but he does say that he wants a separation. The conversation becomes heated, and Shanann says something like, "You will never see these children again." When Chris hears that, he became really angry. He got on top of Shanann and strangled her to death. Now, during all of this, Bella is woken up. So the oldest daughter is woken up and goes to the parents' bedroom and sees Chris on top of Shanann, who is at this point dead. Bella is just 4 years old at this time. She doesn't really understand what she's seen. And, she says things like, is mommy okay? What's happening? Does mommy need help? So Chris now has two young girls, a 4-year-old girl and a 3-year-old girl, in his house, his dead wife, and he doesn't really know what to do at this point. So what comes next is truly horrific. Chris wraps Shanann in their bed sheets and puts her body in his truck. And then he takes Bella and Cece and puts them in the back seats as well. He said that he drives about an hour to 2 oil tanks that were owned by his company, the company that he works for. When he gets to this site, he starts digging. So he removes some land. He makes a hole in the ground to bury his wife. Now, the next part of this story is truly horrific. If you're particularly sensitive to stories including children, skip about 2 minutes of this video. He takes Cece, so he takes the youngest girl and covers her mouth and nose and smothers her to death. He covers her mouth and nose until she cannot breathe anymore. He takes her body up one of these oil tanks and puts her inside. Then he comes back down and he does the same to Bella. He smothers her, stops her from breathing long enough to kill her, and then puts her body in a separate oil tank. So with all of this information now, Chris Watts is arrested on August 21 on 3 counts of first-degree murder. On November 6, Chris pleads guilty. So he says he admits, I am guilty of these crimes. Now, this was part of a deal. Because the crime that he committed was so horrific, it looked like he would be facing the death penalty. As we know, in some states in America, the death penalty is still an option for criminals. So to avoid the death penalty, he decides to plead guilty. This is part of the plea deal. The prosecutors also wanted to acknowledge Nico's death, so the unborn baby that Shanann was carrying. They didn't want this to just be ignored. So Chris is also charged with the unlawful termination of a pregnancy. On November 19, he is sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. What this means is he will be in prison for the rest of his life. During the sentencing, the judge described the murders of Shanann and her baby girls as one of the most horrific crimes he had encountered in his career.
Words that come to mind when I hear the evidence in this case are a senseless crime and the viciousness of the crime. And equally aggravating in this court's determination is the despicable act of disposing of the bodies in the manner in which they were done in this case. I've been a judicial officer now for starting my 17th year, and I could objectively say that this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen. And nothing less than a maximum sentence would be appropriate. And anything less than the maximum sentence would depreciate the seriousness of this offense.
Chris was just crying. He didn't say much. He didn't even make a statement. He was looking down at the ground as the judge told him he would spend the rest of his life in prison. So today, obviously, Chris Watts is still in jail. He has no chance of getting out. The family of Shanann, Chris's family as well, everyone was just devastated by this story. It was something that shocked not only them, but the nation, and I think the world actually. And the biggest question of this is just why? Why did you do this? Why did this happen? Even if you fell in love with another woman, even if you were cheating, if that was the worst thing that you were doing, get a divorce, leave your family, leave your wife, it's just incredible to me that the solution he came to was to kill them, all of them. And not only that, but then dispose of their bodies separately. Didn't even put them together. Like they were trash. He just threw them away. He annihilated his family and then just kind of threw them away. And what was he expecting? That the next day he could just continue with this relationship and that would be over? The arrogance of this man to think that he would never be caught, to think that he would just be able to continue going to work, working on these oil tanks where he buried his babies. It's just astounding. Was this premeditated? Was this a snap in his head in one night? It's completely fascinating to me, this entire case. If you do want more information on this case, I really recommend the Netflix documentary, An American Murder, The Family Next Door. There's lots of footage in this documentary from Shanann's Facebook, from her social media, the videos that she was posting of her family, the body cam footage from the police officers that went to the house, the interrogation, the court hearings. It's all in this documentary. So that is available on Netflix. And of course, it's in English. So if you want to continue listening, I really recommend watching it with the subtitles in English. Let me know what you think in the comments. Was this a case that you already knew? As always, the vocabulary bank is down below in the description. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you found this interesting and I hope you learned something, and I will see you next time. Bye.